Alrighty, hello everybody, it's beau-hindman from masterly.com, and it is the 8th of November, 2013, Friday I believe, which is, means it's the day of the weekend, so make sure you go out and have a good time, just don't drink and drive, and all that good stuff like that. Anyway, today I'm going to be doing something really special. I'm going to be playing Vanguard Saga Heroes, which is always special, but I'm going to be playing it and describing and kind of showing off how I used my immersion project rules, which I will explain and I'll go through and tell you the benefits of. And if you have any suggestions or tips or anything like that, of course, let me know. You can see my communication down there. You can see my @beau_hindman is my Twitter, which I have going right here all the time. Always have Twitter in my tablet. And then you can also email me, beau@massively.com. And of course, you can also talk in the chat room there if you'd like. But what I wanted to do today, it's been a long time since I did this. And what it essentially is it's a way for me to play the game. Sorry, I'm looking at my monitor here a little bit. It's a way for me to play the game that doesn't necessarily give it more depth because the game lacks depth. It just kind of gives it a different twist. And what I discovered is years ago I wrote these rules, probably 4, 5, or 6 years ago. Excuse me, I updated them 3 years ago, just to give you an idea on that. So I mean, I wrote them a long time ago, and I started to use them, I believe, in Vanguard, and then I applied them to different games. Lord of the Rings Online, Rhizome, some other games like that. And what they are essentially is a set of rules that when I used them, when I played with them, they forced me to play in a certain way, which meant that I started to feel a certain way. It would be sort of like if you covered one eye and made yourself walk around for 2 weeks with that one eye. You physically feel different after a while. It's a similar kind of deal. I physically restrained myself from playing in certain ways, or I forced myself to play in other ways. And what ended up happening is I felt a little bit differently with my character, or my character felt a little differently to me. All for the sake, not just for role play, but also for just to see how it would work out, see if I enjoy it, stuff like that. Now, what I've done is I've started a new character. This is a brand new character I started a few weeks ago, and what I wanted to do was stream this character as he literally levels up in his newbie levels. I think right now he's only level 2. To give you an idea, I've only streamed him now twice, and he's only learned basically some crafting stuff and some gathering and some basic first quests. So this is a Vol main character. He's just started out. But before I get started, what I thought I would do is I would explain. Of course, here I am in Thestra. Now, a lot of this is not going to affect me as much because I'm familiar with Vanguard. So, applying this to a brand new game, of course, would help create this. It would be much more effective. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the rules. Now, these are the old updated rules. These are from updated on January 9th, as you can see on my blog. I have a blog at beau-hindman.com. I've kept the blog there since 2002. But these are the updated rules, and I wrote this in January of 2009, so almost 4 years ago. Wait, almost, yeah, 4 years ago? Yeah, 5, 4? What is that before? Not 3. But let me just read you what it says, and then I'll go over the rules. In case you did not know, the Immersion Project was a silly title for a set of rules I made for myself to follow while playing MMOs. Essentially, I want them to force me to slow down a bit. Let me minimize this a little bit so we can always see the game so that people don't wonder, hey, where'd the game go? Let's see here. I have redone them a few times to allow for new games, different games I've been revisiting. I want to tighten them up, like them in 5 or 10 rules. Maybe I can rename them, blah, blah. The most important rule of all in the Immersion Project is number 1 rule, which is you have to have fun. If any of the rules get in the way of you having fun, then you have to stop using the rule. For example, speedy travel. If you're like I've been playing in the Immersion rules, being really serious about how I travel. I can only either walk or use like a ground mount or something like that, or another form of travel. If the game sends me on a flying mount for some reason, I go ahead, because see, I have this flying mount, for example, that I bought in the cash shop, item shop. Oops, moving everything around. So I will probably move my chat a little bit here. I will probably just ignore the fact that I have this flying mount. But, excuse me. So I typically only would use a horse. I would walk or whatever. So let me go back over some more rules here. Second most important rule, you can switch from role play to normal play anytime. Again, as long as it is fun. In other words, I'll often get tales, whispers from a player who doesn't role play, and they say, "Hey, Bo, how you doing?" And I won't answer back, "Who art thou?" and all that stuff. But you can do that. This isn't something that you have to really destroy yourself over. So don't let that become a big deal. Um, but anyway, who's whispering? Somebody just whispered at me. Let's see. Somebody whispered at me. Okay. So let me go over the rules. Okay. The rule number 1, only certain forms of travel are allowed. No instant travel to homes or home areas. What that means is you can run around, you can walk, you can do natural forms of travel. If I had a horse, which I don't believe I have a horse yet, because this is a brand new character. I think the very first mount I received was that dragon, and that was it. I don't know if they're going to give. I forget how the newbie stages of Vanguard work. I think eventually you just buy your first mount. But what that essentially is saying is only natural forms of travel allowed. In other words, you're only allowed to travel by walking or by using a horse, mount, whatever. I mean, technically, the reason that I kind of disallow the use of a flying mount like this is because what it's going to do is it's going to allow me to instantly go anywhere I want. You see what I mean? So flying mounts are not necessarily out if you rent one, but typically I didn't allow for flying mounts. I didn't really like the flying mounts or renting one or anything. So that basically meant that I had to, and no instant travel. That meant that I could not use the gates, which let me see if I can find one real quick. I think the closest to me would be, and I'm not going to be using these regular maps either. I'll get to that in a minute, but I'll find the gate. But there's also instant travel gates that I did not use. So in other words, I would not go to a gate. This might be one up here. I think that is a binding stone. Let's see. But I would not, that's a binding stone. I thought there was a riftway around here. Well, riftways are basically an instant travel, kind of like a flight path you might see in other video games, something like that. Teleport, recall, like this recall spell I have, which will recall me to my bind point. I will not use that. So this here is a bind stone. So I'm binding to this point right now. Howdy, chat room. If you have any questions, by the way, let me know. So now I'm bound to this location, so if I die or if I cast recall, I will come back to that location. But what I ended up doing was even deciding to not allow myself to use recall. So, hey Quirt, how you doing? So, that's basically no instant travel. That meant that I did a lot of walking or I used a horse a lot. Rule number 2, let me zoom in this a little bit. Only realistic forms of chat such as the say channel, /shout channel, and letters, unless the game explains it like a sci-fi game. In other words, if I was in a science fiction based game and it said, you have a walkie-talkie, that makes sense in that world, I would use the walkie-talkie or whatever, But typically what it means is, what I ended up doing is, and down here you can see this, let me put that back in there. I'm going to make the opacity a little higher so you can see it. These are the chat bubbles down here. You have your regular chat, you have your combat stuff, and then I made my own tab. And in that tab, what I did is I right-clicked on it. I'll show you. So you right-click, you name it something. Let's name it, I put it IMM for immersion. You can chat here. You can change the font size. I usually make the fonts pretty large just because it's easier for me to read. Now in the chat channels, and this is how it's going to be in most MMOs, you're going to have probably some options for, see, here's the say channel. I can take that out. Here's the tell channel. Say is basically talk around you, so only the talk that's going to be directly surrounding you. Tells are whispers. I actually turned off tells, or you can actually put a tell response. If somebody sent you a response, you can say, sorry, I'm not accepting tells right now. I'm playing Immersion Project or whatever like that, or Immersion Rules. I can't talk right now. So there are ways for you to put like kind of like a I'm away from the keyboard type message or leave me alone right now. So I often had those in there. People would send me a telling and say, sorry, don't talk to me. But I ended up taking, excuse me, I ended up taking that off because most people who knew me ended up knowing that when I was on, they usually just found me in game. So I'll go ahead and leave tail zombie. You can turn those off. Group, you can leave group chat on just because it's convenient. And in a group setting, you're typically going to be surrounded by or with that group. So group chat is more just like you're talking that immediate area. You could just take off group and leave it with, say, local chat. But it depends on the players. The immersion rules and the immersion project's only as fun as the people you're playing with typically. Guild I left on. I'm in a guild right now. I left that on because I'm part of the Massively guild. I believe this character is. I might not be. Not yet. But Massively made their own guild in here, so I have that. So I left guild on. Shout is literally shouting. Raid. Mine say is like stuff you hear. I believe like emotions and stuff. Emotes. I leave that on. Petitions, no. Spam, no. Looking for group, no. Kills, all the combat stuff you turn off. Meaning you have no idea how many points of damage you did. All the damage. I don't like the damage stuff anyway. I definitely don't care about how much damage I'm doing. So you can turn all that off. Message of the day, blah blah blah. Looting, everything. Ambient sounds. I like to put that in there. That's basically so and so cracks his knuckles or whatever. And you can turn pretty much. You're going to turn pretty much everything off. Oh, excuse me. My antihistamine stuff make me tired. Allergy medicines. So, but once I did that, I also put the opacity down all the way to where it just basically disappears, and then I move it down here in the corner. If I need it, I can chat it, and I can say, go to that tab, and then I can say hello. And then actually, I went ahead and left speech bubbles on. You can see over my head. Hello. If you see that floating over my head, that's not realistic necessarily. Mine see was a form of communication with the classes. Oh, okay. Whatever. There you go. So, but I turned that off. Oh, I think I leave that on because of that. I can't remember what it was for, but basically the idea is to try and only leave realistic forms of chat. The speech bubble I went ahead and left on, not because even when you're talking in local chat, it can kind of be hard to tell who's saying what sometimes. You can forget character names or whatever, or you're going to turn character names off, which, by the way, in Vanguard, you should be able to, if I'm going to show you over here real quick. This is another more realistic thing. Okay, if you see this character right here, this NPC, and if you look at these trees back behind her, the farmhouse, when I hit in as a Nancy, there goes his name. He has a name over his head, so you can say, hey, there's so-and-so. Not only that, but the trees back there, you can see even the cows, they all get a title above their head. I hit in as a Nancy and I leave that off. That's one of the more realistic types of things you should do. Okay, so that's kind of covering realistic chat. Also, I only communicated through letters. I didn't send whispers, so that meant that I'd have to go to a mailbox. I'd have to locate a mailbox, and I'd have to send it from there. Not only that, but I also nominated like a home base, and would only be able to check the mail out of when I had a home, which you can have homes, you can rent homes, and they're realistic open homes like this where you can actually walk in the door like that. I would only allow myself to check the mail at my mailbox at the house, meaning that I had an address and my mail would come to the address. So if I was warned that I had mail, I'd have to take a boat or travel back or whatever back to my house and just to check the mail. So that was much more realistic. Do I use the auction house? I'll get to all that, I think, here in a minute. Only use a recall a limited amount of times per month. I'll allow one recall to one place per week. Recall means instant travel to guild house, get house, home point. So recall was this one right down here. I can show you. Remember, I bound right up here. This is just for an example. I'll show you how the recall works. Recall, use Hearthstone and WoW. Almost anybody now has almost all all recalls. You know, every MMO has some form of this. So see, now I'm back up at the Bindstone, and there's the farmhouse where I was just at, way down there. I believe that's the farmhouse. Yeah, was that it? Yeah, that was the farmhouse right down there where I was just at. So you can see that from there to there, I could have ran it, but recall got me through there. I would only allow myself to use that recall once per day, meaning, or per month, or per week, I'm sorry. Meaning that I would literally sometimes time it using my real life week, but I'd also sometimes do it per real life or per in-game week for day. And I forgot how I kept track of it, but there is a day-night cycle in Vanguard, and I'll show that'll come into play very importantly here soon. I'll show you that. You know, for amount of time you can play and stuff like that. So I would actually, the idea was to limit that amount of time for recall. Now, back to the golden rule. If you were, let's say your buddy says, "Hey man, I got this really cool sword for you. I wanted to give it to you. It'd look great with your costume, whatever. Can you meet me right now? I'm getting ready to go to work. Can you come meet me?" You can use recall or zap to him or teleport or something. You don't have to be so worried about this. It doesn't make any fun. I used recall all the time. It was just when I could, I would try to avoid it. Okay, so next one, number 4, was use role play speech. Now this was updated over 3 years ago, so you know, it does. I do try to kind of sway this stuff depending on the game, but basically use role play speech, not thus and thou, but try to avoid this reality. Hang on, my cell phone is ringing, speech and references. Try to stay in character. In other words, whenever I was playing, I love to use role play speech, but if you an easy rule of thumb for role play type speech is to say that however the NPCs talk in game, whatever they say. I think there's one right here. Let's see. See if I can talk this one.
Yes?
Yes? Okay, so he said yes. He didn't say hello there. Okay. Arthur says, "Don't you lambaste me for working in the fields. I know many men who say it's halflings work, but with the storehouse gone, we need every farmhand we can get out of tilling the fields." That doesn't sound like old English or anything crazy to me. So I go to the local NPCs, I read the local lore, but typically I see how they're speaking in-game, the NPCs, how the developers have made these characters talk in-game. He said, "Take care." He didn't say, "Good, how art thou, goodbye," and all that. And then I base my speech on that. You see, you pretty much talk normally. I just don't say, "Hey, you know, OOC," or anything like that. If anything, if my cell phone would ring or I need to leave or something like that for a moment, I would say, "Hey, I'm taking a break." I'd hit X as an X-ray. I would sit. I'd make a campfire. But typically, I would try to say, "Hey, I've got to seek some shelter for a minute. I need to rest." And of course, if the cell phone was ringing right away, I'd want to, you'd want to hang up for a second. So if anything, let's say your cell phone rings real quick, just hit sit, go get it. When you come back, the person will realize you're back. Stuff like that. So, yeah, the NPC speech, exactly. It's the first thing you look at. So any of these people you're looking at. I could have sworn I left my hammer in here. That doesn't sound like crazy Tolkien-esque, stuff like that. So you don't need to worry. Some role players often worry so much about it sounding specifically a certain way that they forget how the rest of the game and how the rest of the game's speech is going. It's a little bit, they worry a little bit too much about that stuff like that. First person, yeah, there's first person also. I use that a lot as well, where you're traveling like this. As a matter of fact, I used to do it when I was on my horse or my mount. And you could see the mane, but I'm not sure why that is not happening on this mount. But I actually have, while you're there, I'm actually going to open up, you guys won't see this. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I don't believe you're seeing this at all, but let me go here, go to my photos. Albums, I think I have... Darn it. Where is it? Anyway, I'll find it sometime. But basically what it is, it's screenshots of me playing Immersion Project first person mode. And you can actually see my character's, the mane of the horse. It's really, I have to turn on first person rendering. Maybe I didn't do that. It's a good idea. It's been a while since I set this up. In the options, character, first person rendering. There we go. Let's try that. Thank you for that. There we go. So that's first person mode. on the back of my mount. He kind of bounces around a lot. As you can see, look at him, blah, 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 blah. But on a horse, it's much more subtle. This guy I happened to buy in the item shop, and I've been using him, so you can go in first person mode. All you want. I think I actually covered that in the rules, I'm not real sure. Here's realistic trade, by the way. So basically, roleplay speech, try and stay in character. Okay, realistic trade. This is my most fun. The most fun I had with Vanguard. My character has to make a living, so I had to nominate myself a job. Okay, trade is the most common in a real life setting. So with a little adventuring, I will be a trader. So what that meant is that instead of necessarily being a crafter or whatever, hey, I have a mission or a quest.
What do you want?
Okay. Okay, so instead of being,
see you again.
Oh, see, I shall. Instead of being a crafter, what I ended up doing was I would simply trade goods. So I would, back in the day with Vanguard, you could actually buy. The markets were local, and I'll show you a map here, for example. This will actually get to my use of a real life map. Now, whenever I show you these maps, you have to consider that I actually printed out high quality, pretty large maps. I have those maps still, but they're so marked on right now that I don't want to actually use those. I mean, I would show you on camera, but they actually are already pretty much marked as I explored the land, so it was a little bit unfair to kind of, I mean, I know the lands pretty darn well. Like, I know that this city right here is Call, for example, stuff like that. But also just for ease of use for the particular stream, I wanted to show you. Like, here's Targanor. Anyway, what was I trying to say though? Oh, in each of these particular areas, you have Thestra, you have Kalia, and you have Kojin. New Targanor, thank you. And each one of these used to have markets, so you would go to a different area of the land, and you would find an auction house, and each one was local only to that particular continent. So arrows that were valuable here in Kalia, for example, might not have as much value in Thestra. So it was more of a real market. You actually had the ability to kind of, buy low, sell high, whatever the terms are, So what I did, how I ended up making a lot of my money, because I was a ranger, was I would make arrows, and you can make arrows for free through fletching. As a matter of fact, what I'll do is I'll show you because this might be a little easier to, let me go to my ranger character. Hopefully this won't change the size here. And I'll show you how my ranger character, you can still, I would basically fletch and make a lot of arrows. I would spend time gathering the materials. I would gather them together, I would make the arrows, store them in my bank, and then I would take the time to actually travel by boat and or by horse when I got on land. And I would actually, okay, so let's go to, okay, I would actually travel on land. Sorry, I have that lighting effect turned on, and it really is effective there. The ranger arrows are ranger only now, so that specific example doesn't work. Right, but it's just an example, but it is unfortunate. I have no idea where Riku's at here. Let me go to immersion right here real quick. Okay, so I don't know where I'm at. I know I have a mount. Now this is a land mount. For example, this is my wolf. Looks really cool. Did I turn off everything? Not yet. Let's go up here on a hilltop and I'll show you some stuff. It's a little bit easier. Okay. So here I am on Riku. Riku is my main. Riku was the first character I played with. That is Thin Shield, whatever you call it. He's my first character I played the Immersion Rules with. And he's the first character that I killed because of the permadeath rule, which I'll of course talk about here in a minute. But essentially, I would hit forage. I didn't find anything this time. But whenever I would collect enough materials, I could go to my crafting area, assembly, go to ranger. Let's see, I can make arrows. Can I make any arrows? I don't know if I have enough to make any arrows at all. I can make some of these. So let's say then I would sit there and say, okay, I have enough goods. I'm going to assemble all of these plain Warden's arrows. So you'll see it'll pop up. Oh, I can only make the one little batch. Oh, that's sad. Then once I open those batch here, man, it's been a while. Some of the keys have changed. Let's see here. Okay, so I have some plain Warden's arrow in my pack. Then I would go to the unique area, to the unique trading hubs or whatever. Let's say in Call, for example, I would put some in that market. Then I would travel to Thestra, and I'd put some in that market. And then I would travel to Kojin, and I would put some in that market. And I would get there by using a boat and by travel. So it would take me sometimes several hours just to maybe make a few gold, and none of it was combat based. I'd also have to gather the materials and do all that stuff like that. So luckily, like I was saying with the ranger, you can get these arrows, excuse them, and make them. Now you're saying they're ranger only, so yeah, I guess you can only have it use a ranger on it, which is not actual Vanguard crafting, by the way, just simply right. Thank you, chat room, for correcting me once again. But yeah, this is assembly that I'm showing is not actually actual crafting. Assembly is a class-specific thing that I'm able to do. Crafting is a lot different. It's kind of a mini game. I honestly don't mess with crafting much at all. I did not enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it that much, but it is. I mean, it's a good way. It was a good way to make money. Okay, so for example, if I get down, let's say, go down here. Okay, so I landed. Oh, did I gain some safe fall? No, just took 400 damage. Another good advantage of Vanguard is as you travel around, you're going to notice these different signs. You hover over it, it's going to say Village of Three Rivers, Tersh, Thimor's Shield. So let's go down the new rules here, the other rules, and I'll get to to the travel. So that's realistic trade. Realistic trade is basically trying to make some money. You do have to make some money somehow. Now, you could balance it out by saying I want to make enough money, but to eventually, afford my food and stuff like that. But the food is a little bit flexible as well. A home base. Okay, so this is the next rule. Having a home base, I have to nominate my home will be the place in some games or a certain inn in others. A place that will act as my true home. I can only check my mail there, and I have to go there or to an inn to log out. So let's just show, just for sake of argument, I'm going to use my recall real quick, which I don't even have keyed right now. My goodness. So let's hit recall. And I think I'll go back to call here real quick. And I'll show you some stuff. Now typically I'm not going to travel like this whenever I'm doing the immersion project type stuff. But I'll show it to you and see what you think. Okay, so back in call. Let's say I was in call. And let's say I nominated call as my home base and or city. Whatever. I can name a house if I can't afford a house, or if I don't think I'm going to be in the game enough to keep up with a house. I go ahead and use a certain inn. So luckily in call there's both. There's an inn. Sorry, it's going to lag a little bit as the hitching clears up. A problem that does exist not because of my hard drive, but because of the game. Thank you very much. So here's a bank, for example. So that's the bank. If you hover to sign, bank a call. And this should be the inn right down here. It's a tavern. So we could say that. Let's go ahead and go in. Okay, so this is the Tradewind Tavern. I can say, hey, this is my home base. So I can get drink and food here. Where's the NPC? The bartender. I thought there was a barkeep in here somewhere. I might be walking around. Let's see. Here we go. Oops. No, that's a rogue instructor. I thought there was a bartender that you can actually order from. Food and drink bin. There we go. Okay. So you have an inn. You can say, all right, here's some food and drink. You know, you can actually get food and drink that you need to eat, whatever, etc., etc. And then upstairs, you can have access to actual rooms. Where are those at? I think it's over here. So you can say, all right, I'm going to nominate. Vanguard isn't broken. Vanguard hasn't been broken for a long time. I mean, it has its issues. Yeah, you're referring to hitching issues. It's going to happen to anybody. I have a pretty monster PC, and it happened. I asked about it last week, and it just. Okay, so no, that's occupied. Sorry. So you find an in room, and let's say, okay, so this is my in room, blah, blah, blah. You know, once a day I have to log out here. So you physically have to make yourself log out here. You could do this in your own house or whatever. And so let's say if you have some mail, it says, okay, warning, you have mail. Then you need to go ahead and say, okay, well, I've got to go down and check the mail. Let's go down here. The mailbox is around here somewhere. I think it might be out this side. Mailbox. Well, I know there's one in the bank, so let's go to the bank. But the point is what you're doing is you're trying to force yourself to actually log out in certain areas and use only certain facilities to represent a home address, which people have always had. I mean, you've always had a certain home that you lived in, you know, stuff like that. So, and it would only be expected that you probably have something like that here. So here's your mailbox. You can click on that. Say, all right, I've got to write. So you can say, hey, let's write a letter to Riku. And you say, hello. And you say, you owe me money. Signed, Riku. Send. So I can't send myself right away. So you send your mail and you check your mail through that particular position. There's still a lot of performance upgrades. Yeah, I don't know if they're gonna. I honestly don't know if they're going to ever fix the hitching. It sounded like the answer I got last week was no. But whatever. So wherever you nominate your home base, that's where you do it. You try to use roleplay speech. You try to use realistic trade, meaning because earlier they were asking, do I use an auction house? I think you can. Yeah, I think you should be able to or want to use the auction house in your home base or in your hometown. I try to nominate a single home base. Did I go on the wrong one? Usually I do it here. I'm on the wrong side. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think the idea though is that you don't want to necessarily. Whoa, I was on the wrong side. So let's show you here. I've got the.
It's a dry heat.
See, this is a global exchange. See, there's nothing you can do about trade and that somebody picks it up. You can say something like, all right, cool. I'm putting it in here, and the other person picked it up over there, but instead of picking it up, they traveled to me, whatever. Or you can simply get around that by saying, you want to buy this sword from me. You know, you talk to the person in game, like to her, you could say, hello, and you can hit /wave. You know, whatever to this person. Now notice I'm not even targeting that person. I might have ridicules turned. There we go. Sometimes I'll turn off ridicules and stuff as well. So, you know, you can do person-to-person trading, or you can make them meet you somewhere, or you can say, all right, well, I dropped it off here in this auction house and they picked it up there, whatever. It's the real main thing is you're not going to be able to have everybody play by the same rules that you want to play by, but you can make yourself play by those rules, and then you're going to be able to get the enjoyment out of it. Okay, so excuse me. So next rule, because we're going to get I got about 30 minutes here. It's not bad. So make sure you nominate a home base. I usually enjoyed having like an in room, and what I ended up doing was, if there was a certain time of day, like if you notice it's getting dark over there. It's going to be getting dark soon. Let's say there's 12 hours or whatever, but for a day cycle, for 12 hours a day, 12 hours a night, let's say roughly. Then I tried to kind of build it up. Now you can also, I believe, know the time. I think you can put time. Yeah, local time, game time, it'll tell you. And if you hit time, you can see it right down there. It'll actually tell you what time it is. You can actually keep track of that and say and I'll go over it. Some of my other rules will cover that, like every so many hours I would eat, everything like that. Okay, so next is the maps. Now this is what I was talking about earlier. The maps are an actual really, what is the day-night cycle in the game? I can't remember how many minutes it is. I want to say it's an hour or so, not an hour. Every 30 minutes it switches over. I could be wrong. It might be an hour, but it's not very long. But it's long enough to give you a real kind of, and as you can see through the just incredible clouds and stuff like that, Vanguard has some of the best day-night cycles. So it's really, it feels slow and realistic, but it's not like all day, all night. Only use a physical blank map that needs to be filled out by me in real life. In other words, what I did is I printed out some of these maps. I found some good maps like these. So I believe I found these on Suresha.net. And I actually was physically printing these out to have blank ones, and my printer messed up on that. But so you actually find you some decent ones, print them out. You might print them out in sections and tape them together, which I did old school years and years ago. And then let me get back to the rules here. And I would fill them out as I go along. So once in other words, if I would find a call, for example, let's say I was on the map and say, hey, you know, now of course it's a lot easier for me to know this now, but I can notice, hey, this is a circular city. You know, I could ask a player, hey, hello, where am I? What city is this? That's not like super roleplay speech or anything. So I might ask a player that they say, oh, the city you're in is Call, for example. So I can recognize it on the map. They can say it's no, you know, you get little clues by asking players, maybe even NPCs. See, and he says, this is Call, thanks. Actually, I'll say thank you. So then I go to my real physical map like this. I right click on it, maybe I put it in a paint program, or hopefully I have it with a pen and paper and I write on there Call. So my old map that I actually have still has it marked on here Call. Up here it has QA Riverbank. I think it's right over here. You know, and I've actually got everything marked. So that's why I kept everything. I didn't want to use those filled in ones today to show you how I do it. So right here I might go, oh, that's Call right there. And so I might mark that or whatever. Okay, so let me open that rule back up. This is use landmarks and lay of land to get around. This is proven much more difficult than I thought, but fun. Some games need to put on blank maps. Some games need to put out blank maps. Some games it's hard to find a blank map. If the game explains maps, try and use it minimally to encourage landmark usage and memorizing the landscape. What that means is basically as the sun goes up. Let me see if I can get to a higher point. Let's see where I can go here, and I'll show you. Before the sun comes up, or it goes down and the moon comes up, let's see if I can get there. Let's go over this way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run up here and get on top of this hill to give you an idea of how I figure direction. Now it's already starting to get pretty dark, so hopefully I'll make it in time. Okay, so you can see the sun going down over there. Now, this is a thing I've been trying to figure out. Maybe somebody in the chat room can help me figure it out. I can't remember how to get rid of the compass. I went to change my UI, and I can't, for the life of me, can't remember how to get rid of the compass. See the hitching that's happening right now? That is not my computer. That has been going on since 2006. Okay, so let's keep going and keep going. That's a chunk line, exactly. Whenever you go over the chunk line there. Okay, so let's get up here on the top of a hill. Right about here. This be a good spot. See how completely beautiful the game is. Now that's where I look all the way down there. You can see Call. That's where I started out at. All the way down there. Isn't that lovely? So what we're going to do, the first thing you need to do is figure out which way is east and west. Now we know, now I have my compass, but I'd like to turn my compass off. Now you can leave your compass and say, okay, you can leave your compass by saying, my character has a compass in his backpack. That's not like beyond the technology of the game, I guess. But the reason I turned the compass off before, you know what? I think I had to get a mod before to actually turn the compass off. Let me see if I might be able to do this. Go to layout mode, take the compass, or take the forms, I should say, these little forms, and just cover the compass up. Let's just do that. So now I can't even see the compass, instead of having to actually work around it. So as the sun goes down, we know that basically the sun goes down in the real world in the west. The sun comes up and the moon comes up in the east. So it'll get darker here. You're going to start seeing the moon come up. So what you're trying to do, the first thing you should try to do is establish a sense of direction using only landmarks and or the sun and the moon and the stars. I know the ranger is the best ever. Exactly. Just a side point. While we're waiting for the moon to come up, there was a bug a while ago where you could not. You could use your archery if you were using style of precision style. You can actually use your bow up close for combat. You can actually shoot creatures that are in melee range with you. Shoot, shoot. They said it was a bug. I remember this specifically. Maybe you Vanguard players remember this. And then they said, no, we're going to go ahead and... Ah, here comes the moon right here. You see the moon behind me? Right there. So here comes the moon. So the direction I'm facing right now, I need to figure out what direction that is. So I can say, to somebody I can say, excuse me, which direction is the moon rising in? Say something like that. Let's say, for example, let me make the font a little bigger. You can do it however you want. You can establish it in other ways. You can maybe I could point. So I can ask somebody like this, another player who's using a compass, east. Thanks. So now that I know that that's east, right? Easy enough. It sounds like something silly and stupid or whatever, but you're actually establishing, see, different games, most MMOs that I've tried this in, they have the sun and the moon rising east-west, typical Earth kind of style stuff. Some of them will have two moons or something, so you have to find different landmarks. Sometimes you even have to find different landmarks in the sky. You're going to have to find, like, okay, there's certain stars that move a certain way, or that city is east of this city, or whatever it is. But now that I know that's rising in the east, so behind me, directly behind me, must be the west. So I'll establish it that way. I'll say, okay, so right now, if that's east and that's west, then that must be north, because north, east, south, west. So then that must be south. So Carl would be kind of southwest, southeast of me right now, if that makes sense. So the reason the reason this is important is sometimes you'll get descriptions in quests, especially in certain MMOs, that will say, how do I find a quest? And it'll say, go east of here, and you'll know, or whatever. East of here is this. Now, the reason you also want to cover up your compass is because your compass will, if I nominate a certain, let me go back here and I'll show you. If I move my forms down here in the corner, if you can see that, you see my compass down there now? Okay, so let's leave the compass open and let's just look while we're looking there. Sure enough, east, it's pointing east. East is the moon. So it does go in the east. So let's say I'm going to go ahead and open my quest window. Now your quest log, I go ahead and allow the quest log because it's simply a notebook. You could be writing things down. Let me see what rule we're on real quick just to make sure I don't get too far off. Mods, weather, and food. Okay, so we got 3 more. This physical blank map thing is still bearing on here. So let's say I find sort by level. And then let's actually sort by chunk, meaning the area. Okay, so if I click on that, let's actually click on a better one. No, I'm trying to find one in here that's kind of closer to... Let's just use that one. So if you notice, it's going to be really hard for you to see unless you're on 720 right now. But if you see my compass down here, there's an actual little red line. I'll kind of show it in a dark area. It's actually moving as I move my camera. That's one reason you want to hang up. You want to get rid of that compass. Is that little red line is telling you exactly where to go. So if I open the quest that I'm talking about right now and I read it, with the recent increases in patrols of the Gulch, blah blah blah. These attacks need to stop. Teach them lessons to travel to the Casavari Gulch and slay many of the tougher inhabitants. With a quest like that, you might not find out where the Casavari Gulch is. Savari, however you say it. you might have a problem locating it. I can guarantee you that there are ways to find that out. Now, the problem with the Immersion project and something like this is that um, you can't just say to the NPC, "Hey, which way is the Karsvari Gulch?" And he's going to go, "Oh, it's over that way," because most NPCs aren't that advanced yet, or it's just not it's not that kind of a game or whatever. So sometimes you might have to cheat by going with your compass, or what I prefer to do is cover that back up. I don't like the compass. What I prefer to do is actually just simply ask around, wait for another player, use landmarks, talk to the other NPCs. Some of the other quests will give you information, or you do the quests that are in the particular area, and you try to stick to that area. That particular quest happens to be in Karsvari Gulch, which I can show you. Now I'm cheating using my regular map. Is going to be actually right over over that way. So let's head that way, and I'll see if we can find it. See if I can get around. I don't know if I can get around there this way. I don't think I can. No, I can't. We'll go to the Gulch though, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. I might have to. I'm gonna have to go this way, aren't I? Yep. So now we're running all the way back down to Call. See, I don't know which direction I'm going necessarily, but after a while what happens is when you use actual landmarks, or you want to use the sun or the moon, you can always look up and say, all right, where's the moon at? Let's see. You don't see it yet. So let's get to a spot where I can see. This is how they did it back in the day, or they used, of course, a compass, which we're not. The reason we're not doing the compass thing is because it just gives away too much information. It's not because it's not realistic. It's because the information on the compass directly point you to it is just going to make it easier. It's not that the NPC couldn't mark on your map where to go. He or she could. But again, the idea is that if you can put yourself physically into certain situations, you'll start to feel a little bit different. Okay, so that's east. I know that. It came from the east, so we need to go. That's east from the. So we can figure that Karsvari Gulch is up there, up on those mountains. So that's one reason you want to use real-life maps. Is I might say, okay, I'm in Call here. I know I was right up here. So I would mark that on my map or whatever. And then once I discovered where the gulch was, which is right here, by the way, I might mark that on my map. And as you start to fill out your map, you're actually making your own map, and you'll refer to it physically in your hand. And what I found that happens is even though I was just kind of playing around being silly and stuff like that, I thought at first, I found that I really ended up enjoying that I would stop and have to look, and my character would have to wait while I looked. And so it created a real sense of tension sometimes, and there are monsters around and all that. So using a real-life map and a real-life sense of direction and landmarks is always, I think, the better way to go. So we know that that's east towards Karsvari. The sun's going to come up there. There's Call, etc., etc. So let's look at the next rule real quick here. Okay, so that's physical blank maps. Mods. Mods are basic programs that can be installed. This is older. This is an older rule when mods were really a big deal. A lot of games now, a lot of MMOs now are so customizable. It's really not as big of a deal. But I actually used mods to take away or to delete information from the interface, not give me more. So I might take away. I even went so far as to take away my own health, which meant that it was very possible for me to get myself killed. When you target a creature, I'll show you this real quick. You can see I can see their health here. I actually had maps or mods that would take that information away. I took away the reticules. Of course, I would take away their names. So you can see when I hit N as in Nancy, I took all the names away. So I couldn't see the little dots. The idea was that if I saw a creature in real life, quote unquote, I wasn't sure how tough that creature would be. Now, after a while, what happened is not only did I get to know Vanguard, but I would get to know the creatures and how they would look in the certain areas. So I would know, okay, in this area, creatures are around like 10 or 11, 6, 8. So I'm really safe here being that I'm level 20. So I wasn't really worried about it. Here's a ghost, level 22? Oh, level 40, I'm sorry. That's part of a quest. So you end up getting to learn the lay of the land by physically looking at it. Even by some of the sounds and stuff like that as well, you start to recognize certain areas, certain things, and you learn the value of the high ground. You can look around, you can say, okay, so that was east because the moon was going in there. That's east, so I need to go up there. Blah blah. Blah. So the UIs that or the mods that I would use would actually end up taking away more information than they would give me. So, and by the way, there's call, and there's where I was up, right on standing all the way up there. And that's the greatest thing about Vanguard is being able to see something going to. It's so good. Okay, so UIs and mods are great. The only rule concerning that is that you should use them to actually delete information, to not give you extra information like how much damage you're doing. Of course, if you're raiding or you need that information, don't worry, you do what you want. I'm just saying this is what I did. Okay, this was a really fun rule as well that got me in some trouble occasionally. And then for a while, Vanguard's weather system was messed up. It would rain and you couldn't see it because the rain was so tiny. It was kind of, from what I understand, was based on older resolutions, and it was not based on newer resolutions, higher resolution monitors. So the rain would be really, really, really tiny. But now the rain, you can actually see the rain again. So you can see right now the clouds are fine. You'll see occasionally some rain clouds rolling in, and we might see some as we play. Then it might actually start to rain. Now the rule on that was basically this: if the MMO has a good weather system, which a lot of them do, only a few of them actually have weather systems that will actually affect your character. Mabinogi, for example, will actually affect your character. Has a good weather system, or at least good enough weather system, as well as a good day-night cycle if the game world has a day and night. Then there must be realistic limits put on how long a character can adventure without rest. Even heroic characters need rest. For example, my little Rocky Ranger in Vanguard is not a hero. He stumbles through fights and barely escapes alive. I will allow him 1.5 days adventuring max before he needs to rest. And to rest, he would need to find a campfire, a house, or some other shelter, and either physically lie down, or at least restrict his movement for at least another cycle of day or night. Okay, so let's cover that part. Let's say it's time for me to rest. I need to find some shelter. So these little huts would not count as shelter. Is it linked to the Immersion Project site updated, and I just read it off another site? No, the one I'm reading right now is off of my blog, beau-hindman.com. It's not updated. I haven't updated it in forever. I probably will do. I will probably do. I was going to do an updated Immersion Project stream like this once every week, but our streams are more limited, so I have to kind of figure out what I'm going to do there. But feel free to update your own version of it. But so let's say it's time for me to rest. I've been going for one day cycle and then one half of a night cycle, which is, I believe, what I said the rule was. You can tweak it. 1.5 days. So you could say one whole, as soon as it's night, one whole night cycle, and then a half of the day cycle. So I'm looking for some shelter, meaning an actual building. Here's all this up here. Let's just head to the inn. Let's say it's time for me to lay down. Say, okay, my character's been adventuring long enough. These are the barracks. I think I go down here. Let's see. Typically, it's good to have your home. I actually used to have a house, and I would actually travel all the way back to my house on the boat before I could log out. And I'd be like, oh, I can't eat dinner right now. I'm logging out. It would take me 30 minutes or 40 minutes. Let's go over here. Let's say I nominated this my house. I rented this in room, whatever. Some games actually have rentable, renting room mechanics and stuff. Has the same rules. Yeah, all the rules should be the same. So this is the one I had before. Let's go in here. Let's close the door for privacy. Close door. Then let's say I need to go ahead and lay down. I forget how to lay down in Vanguard. To sleep? What's the command? I forget. I know that X is sit. What's the command? What's the lay down command? I can't remember, chat room, for Vanguard. There is a GG/sit. No, sit, I know sit. /lay. Or if I'm on a bed, it'll lay down, okay. I don't think I'm on a bed right now. Let's just double check. Okay, so let's just do sit. So let's say, you could say he's laying down whatever. In your house, you can actually have bedding, you can have all sorts of furniture, you can actually decorate a house. The housing is really, really cool. So either way, so now I have to rest there. These rules can be tweaked for at least another cycle of day or night. Now, how you might know that is you could do time. You can go back to time. You could say, okay, it's 1:25. I guess that's in the morning, probably. 1:28, so it's 3 minutes. It's about a minute every second, I guess. So you can actually take that and say, all right, I need, let's say, a whole day cycle of 8 hours or whatever. So let's say we can get up at 9:25. Now you can do different things while you sit here. You can do what I used to do is I actually used to just sit here and let the game run. I would go and do other things, literally do other things around the house, physical other things, like clean the house, whatever. I'd come back and hit time. I think some mods would give me a timer and or an alarm, or you can actually set an alarm as well. You know, I could say, okay, let me open my tablet now that he's sitting down, and I'm going to go to apps. There's an alarm. Let's add an alarm for 8 hours later. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. So, and then save, and then you can hit go, blah, blah, blah. You know, you can do whatever, you could do however you want. You can set an alarm. A lot of your phones and everything, of course, as well have an actual timer, and you're going to want to do the 8 hours or whatever. And speaking of that, we're actually pretty close to time. Let me cover the rest of this in food, then we'll get out of here. If the weather becomes poor but is not that bad, my character can adventure like normal, but would need to cut his adventure time down by half a day. In other words, if it starts to rain but not storm, and some games will tell you, this depends on the game and everything, you need to cut your adventuring time down by half a day. In other words, instead of a day and a half, you want to do just travel for a day or whatever. If the weather becomes severe, he or she would need to find shelter or a campfire. Again, somewhere to get out of the weather. He would need to rest there until the weather passes. I'm still working on penalties if he cannot find shelter. I think what I ended up making myself do, there is a lay down emote though. You can actually lay down. There is in your house. I remember actually physically laying down. In fact, in certain beds, I know there's an emote. I can't remember where I saw it. It might be out in one of these buildings out here. There was an actual... But anyway, what I would do is if it would be raining and if I could not find shelter, I would actually make myself walk. I would just use the walk, which I think I can just switch to like that. And see, so now he's walking, but he's walking fast because he's got that on. So I'd actually make him walk, representing him slogging through the mud and all that stuff like that. So if there was a bed in here, I thought that I could lay down on it. Might not be. Let's go up here and double check. So I'd actually penalize myself by physically making his movement slower. And what I ended up finding out is what that made me do was just, it felt a lot. It just made me feel physically like I was really immersed into the game. Alright, so that's some of the speed of food. Some MMOs like EQ2 will already tell you when your character is hungry. And thirsty, I'll have to check in most of my current notes, but there'll be a set amount of time before my character to go before he or she needs to rest and eat, possibly half a day adventuring. So what that basically meant is usually when I rested, I would actually slash rest. No, that's just a sit. If we found a bed, it would probably work. But what would happen is I would actually usually save food. I would open my backpack, shift B. Let's say I'd find a bit of food. Oops, what am I doing? Where's me some food? And while I was resting or whatever, I would eat some food. Where's some food? That's not an eye. Where's a piece of food? I might have a lot of it put back into the bank. And actually what's cool is your character can actually make a campfire. Not inside, I guess. My ranger can make a campfire. And then you can sit by that. Darn it, I wanted a piece of food. Anyway, I would actually eat when I was resting, etc., etc. With the idea that what you're doing is you're physically forcing yourself to take moments to pause and to do stuff like that. You know, why would I ever do what? Such a waste of time? I don't know what you're saying is a waste of time. But anyway, what it would do is it forces you to physically take breaks to do whatever. and then you end up feeling more immersed in the game. It sounds really silly, but it's kind of like if you made yourself. I know that in certain MMOs, for example, I was playing State of Decay today, and I've been playing it a lot. It's a great not MMO, but a single player type of game. And you have to sneak around a lot so the zombies don't hear you. And when you're sneaking, you're kind of sneaking, or it's one of those classic shooter moments when you're actually needing to lean around the corner and you'll find yourself actually leaning. If you ever see anybody actually do that, that physical connection is caused, that immersion that they're feeling. They're so immersed in the game, they're actually just leaning in the game in real life and not realizing it. That's caused because they're physically interacting or physically reacting to the game. So since in an MMO there's not so much of that going on where you sneak and do necessarily. You create those moments by doing stuff like making yourself use a real life cloth map and marking on it as you go along, finding shelter, nominating a home address, forcing your character to eat food, because MMOs don't necessarily do that. That doesn't mean I think MMOs like Vanguard are lacking because they don't have those systems in them. I think they don't deal with a lot of those systems because they are tedious, and most players would probably just poo-poo on them anyway. Just like players who talk about wanting immersion and stuff like that, but they use driftways and speedy travel all the time because they can't resist the convenience of it. So it's a way for you to get yourself to kind of slow down. And what I found is when I did it for a couple of years before my first character died, and by the way, the permadeath character I added, the rule I added on later where he actually would die. If he died in the game, I'd actually deleted him. That's what happened to this character the first time he lived. He got to level 32, was killed, and I actually literally deleted him and everything he had, which really sucked. He had a lot of gold and stuff. So, but basically the idea is that you're creating a set of rules that makes you in real life physically do things, even if it's just wait time, make your character walk, make your character eat food. That you'll find that you actually start to feel a little bit more like your character might feel. And so I really enjoy it. I hope you enjoy it. You should try it sometime. If you want to find my immersion rules, I'll pop them up on Twitter, but you can always go to beau-hindman.com and search for immersion rules, or you can just go immersion rules Bow Turkey or Vanguard or something. You'll find them. I'm going to probably redo them, and hopefully I'm going to start streaming every time I stream Vanguard, stream an immersion character. I just don't know how often I'll be able to do it to where it'll be feasible, so we'll have to see. But anyway, thanks for having me, people, or watching, everybody. If you want to email me, you can at beau@massively.com. You can also tweet me at beau_hindman. If you have any suggestions for games. I'm gone till next Monday. I'll be back next Monday with the developers from Pandora Saga. We're going to be talking about that game and playing through it. She keeps for some reason. I don't know what she's thinking of. So check that out on Monday. That'll be there at 4 p.m. EST. Keep an eye on the stream team. And thanks for everybody for joining me. And I'll see you Monday then. Bye-bye.